Hello, everybody. It is Sunday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, here for our Steelers postgame show on the PG Steelers YouTube channel and postgazette.com with the guy who called it, Paul Zeise, Post-Gazette sports columnist. He'd been predicting throughout the week that the Steelers would pull off the victory based on gut. No logic necessarily per se, because that's not where the numbers led us, but Paul, you saw this Steelers victory coming today against the Indianapolis Colts at Acrisure Stadium. Excited to dig into it. Before we do, though, just want to give you a chance to, talk your stuff.
Well, the biggest thing to me was this. When you got a guy like Daniel Jones that's playing so incredibly above what he's used to playing, you just kind of feel like there's going to be that game where he comes back to earth a little bit. The Steelers spent all week listening to how they were going to get destroyed, and usually, you know what, they've got a couple of guys in that locker room that have a lot of pride, and you just kind of felt like it was the perfect storm for exactly what to happen. It happened. What's hilarious, Adam, is as this was going on, the Packers lost to Carolina Panthers. The Packers who last week everyone had going to the Super Bowl. I mean, the NFL is a marathon. It's not a sprint, so it doesn't surprise me at all. The Steelers often play well at home after a loss or two, and we'll see. Do I think they'll win next week? Probably not, but that's a different story for a different day.
Indeed it is. 6 turnovers forced by the defense today. We're going to get into them first. We'll talk about the offense in a little bit. Before we do, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by FanDuel. We also want to thank Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Paul, we mentioned the 6 turnovers. Defense was very opportunistic. A lot of times when they've had a few games like this over the years since we've been doing these post-game shows, and every time I feel like we come on and say, well, this isn't sustainable. This isn't legit. They can't live off generating this many turnovers. But today I felt like they were in control and generated 6 turnovers, whereas sometimes teams move the ball and they kind of need those turnovers to bail them out. Today didn't feel like that to me, Paul. What were your thoughts on how the turnovers impacted your view of this defense and how they've been able to bounce back from these losses against the Bengals and Packers in which they looked terrible?
Well, I think, it should be noted that they did give up 360 yards of offense. So obviously, they were pretty good against the run, but the Colts got behind. I thought the 2 big turnovers that changed the game, they get the ball, they go right down the field, 7-0 Colts. They get the ball. I think the Steelers go out 3-0, 3-0 again. Actually, they get the ball on the 10-yard line and can't score. And then the Colts go, 50, 60 yards. Looks like they're getting ready to go up at least 10-0, if not 14-0, and then Watt, gets the strip sack. That was a huge one. And then the next series, after the Steelers tied the game, the next series, Daniel Jones throws one right into the gut of Peyton Wilson. Those two probably really changed the game. But the entire game, it was almost like they were just forcing turnover after turnover. They got, they had the one that bounced off somebody and then they intercepted. It reminded me of the Patriots game a little bit. Here, you have a 6-1 advantage in turnovers. It shouldn't be a 7-point game. And I get it. They kicked the field goal late to make it a 7-point game. But I think what we've seen, the formula for this defense is going to have to be against good offenses, and that is force turnovers. Be aggressive up front. Go hit quarterback. Go get the quarterback and make sure that you force mistakes. Don't lay back. Don't let them just stand there like they did with Flacco. That's going to have to be the formula for this defense, because I think the teams can move the ball against them if you've got a good quarterback. But if you can impact the quarterback and you can create turnovers, it's the great equalizer.
You mentioned that first drive, Paul. That was clinical by Daniel Jones. But then I think a lot of that yardage came in garbage time. That last two couple drives there where the Colts. I mean, the game was over. The Colts were trying to do their best to try to claw back in it somehow. But where the game was decided, I thought at least that the defense dominated pretty well. They weren't like the Patriots game, if you remember, Paul. The Patriots almost scored, 2 or 3 times. They were down on their goal line, and the Steelers got those turnovers. That didn't really happen today. They forced those turnovers near midfield, maybe a little bit in their own territory, but at least they pushed the action further out than they did in that New England game. And I think that's why this effort felt a little more legit to me. Let's dig into some of the finer points here, Paul. First of all, I think it was noteworthy that Jalen Ramsey played a lot of safety today. That seemed to be one of the big adjustments that was made. They referenced it on the broadcast. J.J. Watt said it was part of the simplification process of this defense. What did you think about how they used one of their most expensive players, a guy who we've talked about quite a bit in the last couple of weeks as the secondary is struggling?
Well, I mean, I think it was out of necessity, right? They had a lot of guys. They had a bunch of safeties that were hurt. I mean, Deshaun Elliott's now out for the season, and you've got, you had Chuck Clark was hurt, and I think Jabril Peppers was hurt. I mean, I think it was more out of just desperation and necessity. They're just trying to make, kind of get through all of these injuries to figure out how they can piece together a secondary that works. So, I mean, I think he's a good football player, and at this point in his career, the best position for him might be safety, right? But he's your best cover guy. And I think that it's one of those things where, if they can figure out something at safety, they'll probably have him play more at corner. By the same token, if they can figure something out at corner, then maybe they can use him at safety, and maybe the secondary is a little better with him back there. So, when they got him, one of the things they said about him was basically that he is a guy who's very, very versatile, right? He's a guy, and Mike Tomlin talked about his position for versatility, and they like the fact that you can move him around. We saw that today. I think that was the most important thing right there, is that they showed that you can move him around and use him in different positions. So to me, I think that's probably the
Sorry, Paul, my feed had a bit of a hiccup there, but we're back. I thought that the way they used Ramsey was noteworthy for potentially later in the season when hopefully you do get a little bit healthier. Maybe you get some a little help at safety, but you still give yourself the option to deploy him there because it was a big change in this defense, and the defense worked today. Paul, the pressure was also very good. You had the 2 sacks from Alex Highsmith, including the strip sack. T.J. Watt had the strip sack. Keeanu Benton got on the board. Joey Porter Jr. got one. Wasn't really a traditional sack. It was more along the sideline with Daniel Jones retreating. But nevertheless, Steelers get the 5 sacks after none the past couple of weeks. It seems like they're going in bunches here, Paul. Either they get a bunch or they get none. And there's not a whole lot of middle ground there. What did you think about how the front seven was working? Was it a matter of they were better today, or was it a matter of the guys behind them were covering a little bit better, gave them that extra second to get home?
No, I think they were better. I think the one thing is the Stars played, at least 2 of them played like, stars for the most part. I thought this was the best game that Alex Highsmith has played, and I can't remember how long. I can't remember the last time when there were so many plays where he showed up. Even if he didn't get the sack, or even if he didn't get the big play, or even if he didn't make the stop, he showed up on so many plays. You know what? That's what you're paying him to do. That's what you talk about. T.J. Watt obviously probably changed the game with his strip sack. And I think those guys, I thought, even a guy like Patrick Queen made a lot of plays. Their stars played like stars today. And that's kind of what you need from them. I mean, you need those high impact plays in order to really change games. So I think, honestly, they were just winning up front. And I still think the secondary stinks, Adam. I don't think they can cover anybody. I think they're not very good. But at the end of the day, I really think that front seven will dictate Are we there? Yes.
Yeah,
So,
you're back.
What I was saying is, I don't think their secondary can cover. Tremendously, and I didn't think they did a great job. I think they got a couple of plays that were fortunate that went their way, but at the end of the day, I thought the front seven really dictated the game.
Who's hooting and hollering in the Acrisure Stadium cafeteria, Paul? Is something happening in another game?
Yeah, I guess something's going on in the Bengals-Bears game. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. I mean, it's I'm not even sure what's going on, to be honest. It looks like the Bears might have scored late or something and are probably going to beat the Bengals.
Paul, talk to me about Peyton Wilson, who had a great game today. Again, he's been inconsistent at times, but he was one of the few positives last week, helps generate the one turnover this week, seemed to be all over the field at times. Are you starting to buy the stock? I know you and I have been joking that the Steelers fans have put him in the Hall of Fame a little bit too early, but are you starting to buy it a little bit with him where maybe he's making some progress and establishing himself as a solid linebacker in this league now?
Yeah, he made a few good plays. I mean, he made some plays. I don't know if I'm ready to, do much more than just say he had a good game today. But I thought he was pretty good in terms of what he tried to, what he did. I mean, I think he made some impact plays. Obviously, he had the tip pass. He made a couple of really nice tackles in open space. I don't know that he'll ever be your guy to, consistently come up and stop the run. But I think he's going to be a solid player. I think that's what he is. When we talk about the Hall of Fame, we joke because a lot of people want to probably make him better than he actually is. But to me, I think, if you get that from him, he can be an effective player in this league.
Jack Sawyer also gets the recovery on the one turnover generated by Peyton Wilson. He's had a couple moments, Paul, and I don't think he's going to be a big every down contributor in his rookie season this year, but I remember going back to training camp, the preseason, I said if they find the right situations for him, put him in there on some rundowns, maybe give him a little bit of pass rushing time, but kind of pick your spots to kind of get his feet wet in the NFL, that he might have a chance to be a useful player for them this year, and I think that's what we're seeing with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you're looking for, isn't it? I mean, from your rookie, if he can become a contributor, he can become somebody that plays, a role for you and just gets a little better each week and gets a little bit more active each week. I mean, that's sort of how you develop and bring players along. And, ultimately that's ideally what you would really be looking for in terms of rookies and young guys. You want them to contribute, but you want them to be able to contribute as you bring them along and put them in good situations and in good roles. So I just think that's all part of development. And there are some really good young players on this team, and you hope they get better and better as the week goes on, as the weeks go on.
Joey Porter had 2 more pass interference calls on him today, Paul, but obviously gets the huge interception of Daniel Jones there at the end that, functionally sealed the game. His father, Joey Porter, was on the broadcast celebrating, pretty pumped there with all the other Steelers from the Super Bowl 40 team in the building. What's your assessment of him after a game like today where he certainly had his down moments? I think the one interference call was maybe a little ticky-tack. The other one was probably legit, though, and then he does make that big play. So how do you balance those two things?
I didn't think he played well at all today. Honestly, I know he got an interception. They were in a zone. It was a bad throw by Daniel Jones that hit him between the numbers. Congratulations, he caught it, but I don't think he did anything special to do that. I watched, a lot of plays where he got burnt or he got beat or he was out of position or, and then he has the pass interference penalties. He makes a couple of plays, and he makes a couple of tackles here and there. But to me, he has got to get a lot better than he is. And I mean a lot better, not just marginally better. He's got to get a lot better because he's what, in his third year, right? Or second year. This is his third year, isn't it?
It's his third year, yeah.
Third year, yeah. This is in his third year. He's not a rookie anymore. And to me, I watched a number of plays today where he was either just beat or out of position or whatever. I want to believe he can be a good player for them. I understand, what they see sort of in him, but he didn't play well today. I know that the interception, everyone will talk about that. We'll write about, the interception and how it's redemption for him and all that stuff. I can see that storyline coming. But if you watched him play in and play out, he wasn't very good today.
Paul, any other notes on the defense here? I did want to mention before we move over to the offense on the other side of this break here. The Colts were, 6 of 14 on third down, 5 of 5 on fourth down. That's 11 of 19 on third and fourth down. Does that remain a point of concern? Because I thought last week they did pretty well situationally and got stops even when they were giving up big chunks of yardage. This week it did feel like they were bailing themselves out with the turnovers, but they were like, if it was third or fourth down, you felt like the Colts were going to get it seemingly every time, certainly early on in the game at least.
Yeah, first of all, I'm getting a kick out of these people that are saying fans owe these guys an apology. Look, the criticism of these guys was valid at the time, and it's still valid, right? They had a good game. Let's not lose our mind. Nobody owes anybody an apology, all right? You don't get to say, oh, we played well today, but we hadn't played well the last 2 weeks, so you retroactively you can't criticize us.
I think we lost Paul for a second here, so I'll hop back in while we
wait
for him. Yeah, sorry, Paul.
I'm back.
The Wi-Fi is letting you down today.
It's been awful today. This entire game. It's not just me. Everybody in the press box. You'd get to a certain moment, you could hear everybody groaning, like, "Oh, it's off again." I did the chat mostly on my phone because I turned the Wi-Fi off. But regardless, my point is. Retroactively, you don't get to say, well, you played bad in those 2 games, so that criticism wasn't valid. It was. Now, the third and fourth down, not getting off the field. Again, getting 6 turnovers can erase a lot of mistakes, and I think that's the big thing. But that's something they got to work on. They just got to get better at it. The fourth downs. The one was a fake punt that I think everybody in America except for Mike Tomlin knew was coming. Another one I think was basically a tush push. The one that was a little bit frustrating was late in the game where they threw it, maybe 15 yards down the field to a wide open guy. But for the most part, I think those fourth downs don't concern me nearly as much as the third downs do. I think, the one fourth down obviously is concerning. The other ones to me were just sort of, fourth down and short, and you basically did tush push, some version of the tush push. I don't get too crazy about that, but they need to get better on third down for sure.
Let's talk about offense on the other side of this break. Before we do, we want to thank another couple of sponsors here. We got Savinas Kane and Gallucci, Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorney, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers. With over 85 years of experience, they know how to uncover the truth. They have the experience you need and the commitment your family deserves. They've recovered millions for individuals affected by mesothelioma and other cancers due to asbestos exposure. Call them toll-free at 1-877-227-6558 or visit them online at sdklaw.com. We also want to thank FanDuel Sportsbook. Make sure you check out the Steelers' latest AFC North Division odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm assuming they got a little better today by getting a win that obviously Vegas didn't think they were going to get with the big upset. So we'll see how that helps them stack up with the Ravens in this ongoing race for the division title.
Can I say this, Adam, though? You had to know something was up when, right before the game, maybe like within the last hour and a half before the game, the line was down to 2.5, and the Steelers were only plus 130 to win. So I don't know that Vegas was that shocked at what happened here.
Yeah, well, that's possibly true because sometimes there is that late movement that you got to keep an eye on. But they were big underdogs all week, and I think psychologically too, for a lot of people, it was just a matter of they didn't think the Steelers would be able to hang with this team, and they did. Paul, let's talk about this offense. It honestly felt like I mentioned earlier in the show. I said it felt like the defense wasn't benefiting from the turnovers as much. It felt like they were in control of the game, regardless of the turnovers. The offense seemed like the unit that was needed the help to pad the stats a little bit. They had those short fields over and over again. To their credit, they cashed them in, but if they did not, Paul, there was not a lot of down-to-down consistency today, and I'm not sure if they had to drive the field for some of those drives that they only had to go 20, 30 yards to score a touchdown. I'm not sure they get over the top there. So what was your assessment of how the offense played today?
I thought they were effective in what they needed to do. They didn't turn the ball over until that idiotic one at the end. For the most part, they protected the ball. They took advantage of short fields, except for the first short field they were handed. And I think they basically did what they needed to do to score enough points to win. I question whether the offense is going in the right direction. And I'll also say this, I think if they don't go out and get a second receiver this, next couple of days before the trade deadline, I don't know that they're really serious about making a run. Clearly they need to do that. I don't think that the offense was great today, but the offense was effective and efficient. And, that's good enough when your defense is creating turnovers like that.
Is, opponent's territory in the red zone, the area that Aaron Rodgers is possibly making the biggest difference? Because they flashed up the statistics on the screen about how the Steelers are one of the best teams in the NFL in the red zone this season. But I don't think things, outside the red zone have changed that much. I think we saw some of the same issues of, one bad play seems to short circuit so many of these drives that they seem to need to be on schedule a lot. They don't have a ton of explosive plays over the last few weeks. That was kind of my assessment, is that he, at least in the red zone where they're not trying to stretch the field or anything, he's finding the right guys at the right time, and that seems to be the place that they've made the most progress and put themselves in position to capitalize on some of these drives today. Because I think, Paul, in the last couple of years with this offense at times, we would not have seen them play as well in those situations where they were gifted those short fields.
No, and I think the biggest thing is, Adam, Aaron Rodgers' ability to see the field, scan the field quickly, and make accurate throws in the red zone is what you need. He made a couple of throws down the middle that I think guys in the last few years would not have made. They would not have made those reads. The touchdown to Freiermuth, I thought was an incredible throw by Aaron Rodgers. That's why you bring a guy like him here. Seriously, he's a guy who's going to make a difference. He's the guy that makes those plays. So to me, if you can improve what you're doing in the red zone from what you've done in the past, it helps you score touchdowns as opposed to field goals, and that gives you a chance to win games. I think that the MVP of this team undoubtedly is Aaron Rodgers. I think has made the biggest difference. I think it's the best quarterback play we've seen probably since before Ben had his surgery on his elbow.
Well, excuse me. I agree, Paul. Darnell Washington was targeted 6 times today, had 4 catches for 43 yards. Rodgers seems to love him. And obviously there's the matchup nightmare he presents, but I kind of look at him as the big, bulky guy, and it's going to be difficult to make some of the more athletic plays. I think down near the goal line, he was targeted on that play. The timing was off. I would kind of expect that from a guy of Darnell Washington's size, and I had it written in my notes. I was ready to say, are they forcing it to this guy? Why are they forcing it to this guy? Yeah. I think he caught every target from there, made several pretty key catches on those touchdown drives. So what's your assessment of how his role continues to evolve and the trust and belief that Aaron Rodgers appears to really have in him?
Well, I think what it is a young player that's starting to, kind of figure it out a little bit. And I think the big thing is Aaron Rodgers likes, because he's a big target. And, he said that over the last few weeks, hey, I keep telling him, just go down in the middle of the field somewhere and I'll find you. I think I think he can be a really good weapon. Obviously, his run after the catch is not going to scare anybody. But if you've got a big, strong guy like that with big hands, it's a big target, and you can throw him the ball and get 8, 9, 10 yards every time you throw it to him, I think it's a big weapon, especially because, again, they're trying to build that part of his game because he is a guy who, you can play on every down because he's a good blocker. He can be almost like another tackle. He's somebody that moves people around when you're in the running game. I mean, he's a guy that I think they really want to become an important player for them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve. Paul, it was not a good day running the football. Jaylen Warren got 31 yards on 16 carries. That comes out to 1.9 per attempt. If you add all the other bit players in the backfield today, the Steelers averaged 1.7 per touch, and it was not a small contribution either. They carried 23 times for 38 yards total. Is that your point of concern today? Did the passing game work okay, especially considering you weren't able to run the ball, but you look at a number like that and you say, well, that's a problem. This team is not built to win games if they're struggling like that in the running game.
Well, again, when you get 6 turnovers, I'm saying in a lot of short fields, you really don't need to move the ball that much. But yes, I mean, they need to be able to run the ball better. You're not going to be a team that's going to line up and scare anybody, especially if they don't go get another receiver. They have to be able to become more versatile on offense. But again, I think I've said this a few times. Like we talk about Peyton Wilson and people wanting to put him in the Hall of Fame. Jaylen Warren's another guy who I think is a really good complementary second back. When he's your primary back, I don't know that he's good enough. And so, they've got to get better at running the ball. Part of that is your offensive line. I think one thing that's probably concerning is that Ciamalo again hurt his pec and was out for he's out for the game and who knows how much longer or whatever. But he's obviously, probably your best lineman and certainly, to me, one of your best run blocking linemen. If you take him out of the equation, it gets a little bit scary beyond him.
Paul, were you surprised to find out that Jaylen Warren had not scored in 12 games and then he does it twice today? I had vaguely been aware of that streak, but 12 seemed like a lot longer than I thought. And he to his credit, I mean, that was the one thing that they did well in the running game today was find the end zone, especially after J.J. Watt started calling for it. I don't know how much you could hear the broadcast, but it seemed like they were getting a little too cute with the passing game down deep, and then J.J. Watt said, just run it in. You're the Steelers. And they were able to do that twice at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think, down at the goal line, I think that's his sort of bread and butter. I think he's pretty effective at what he does. But I think, it's the other stuff. It's the other stuff. It's being able to consistently get 4, 5, 6 yards on a carry and do it throughout a game. I just don't know that he's that guy.
Paul, DK Metcalf had kind of a quiet day today, 2 catches for 6 yards, and yet the Steelers still put up 203 passing yards. Aaron Rodgers found, let me count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different receivers. Was that encouraging to you? Because we talk about how all the pressure is on DK Metcalf because they don't have a ton of receiving options. Today, obviously, he was blanketed pretty well by the Colts, but the other guys were able to pick up the slack. If they string a couple more games like this together, you're going to feel better about this passing game and their ability to surround DK Metcalf and make teams pay when they invest too much in trying to stop him.
Not really. I mean, Metcalf dropped a couple of passes. Again, he's got to be their guy, but I think the other guys around them, they did okay. They did what you want them to do. But I don't know that there's another guy around him that I would say you have to worry about if you're another team. They made it work. Obviously, Freiermuth has become a nice, over the last few weeks, weapon. We talked about Darnell Washington, but those guys aren't going to really beat you if you're a defense that's any good. Those guys aren't scary to you. And I think that's part of the issue that the Steelers have right now is Metcalf. And let me tell you this, he dropped at least 1, if not 2, that he should have had. And I think sometimes, he's your star. He's got to catch those ones. So the passing game is still, I think, a work in progress. I just don't know that it's good enough unless they go out and get another receiver.
What would you think of the offensive line today? Gave up the 3 sacks of Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, we've already talked about the struggles in the running game a little bit. How do you add up their performance today, especially in the context of, as you mentioned before, Isaac Seumalo getting hurt, Spencer Anderson having to fill in there again?
Yeah, I think that they had a mixed day. They were good at some of the short yardage situations. They were good down around the goal line. I don't know that they did a great job of protecting Aaron Rodgers, for most of the game. And clearly, when you average 1.8 yards or whatever per carry, you're not getting it done in the run game. But again, when you lose a guy like Ciamalo, I mean, you don't just lose him. Now all of a sudden you put Spencer Anderson in there, right? And you lose some of the ability you had to have the seven offensive lineman sets that you like to have, because now your eligible guy is now playing guard. Now they did move him out there a couple of times, but not nearly like they had in the past, and mostly because he had to play, he actually had to play in their normal formation. So, it was I would say a mixed day for the offensive line. Better than what we saw earlier in the season, but probably not quite as good as it has been the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway. It was definitely the upward trajectory stopped a little bit today, and that doesn't mean that it's going to continue, but they definitely lost a little bit of momentum in my eyes. Paul, let's zoom the camera lens out a little bit here. How significant is this win in your eyes? Obviously, the Colts were 7-1. As a lot of people have pointed out in the comments, they beat a lot of pretty bad teams to get to this point. Is this a big win? Is this not that big a deal? Do they still have to prove it against a couple more teams before you're going to say they're definitely going to make the playoffs? In my eyes, this was one I'd counted as a loss that they now have in the win column. And I think they still have Cincinnati, they still have Cleveland, they still have Miami. Once you get this one, it's much easier for me to envision them making it the distance, even if you lose against some of these better teams that you and I talked about on Friday, the Lions, the Bills, the Ravens a couple of times. Now I think you got a little more margin for error with those teams after you get this one today.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing to me is like every game is big. You got to win games, and this is a big. I mean, listen, this is a team you're probably going to see in the playoffs, right? It could be a playoff team. I mean, you've got to win against teams like this. And this was a game that, people had basically said they're going to lose and all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, guess what? They won. So now, you have a win here. You have a win over New England. You know what I mean? You have win over teams that you might run into in the playoffs. And I think that's important.
Or, importantly, that you're getting wins in the tiebreaker situations and you're getting them against these AFC teams. Listen, you don't want to lose to the Packers last week, but that's a team in the NFC. You're not fighting with them for a playoff spot. So, if you had to pick one of the two to get of the last couple of weeks, if you were going to win one and lose one, you'd rather have it be against the Colts. What do you think of that team, Paul, having seen it up close? Do you think that they met their match today? Do you think they're kind of in the situation the Steelers were last year where they're going to fold a little bit after playing a soft first half of the schedule and then playing a tougher second half of the schedule? Or do you think they have the pieces to bounce back from this and still be a credible threat going into January?
I mean, I didn't think they were 7-1, I mean, to me, they look like a team that probably won't shock me. They finish with like 11 wins, which would mean that they obviously in the second half won't go into a little bit of a tank. But the reality is that's the NFL, when I saw them play the last few weeks, I never thought, boy, that's a juggernaut. I thought, boy, that's a team that is right now, they're playing bad teams. They're hitting on all cylinders. They've got some explosive players, but they still have Daniel Jones as their quarterback. And I still can't get over that. And to me, I think that they're going to be an 11 or 12, maybe even a 12-win team, although I think 12 is probably aggressive. They'll probably be, right there, maybe even win that division. I just don't think that I ever looked at them and said, boy, this is a team that's going to be 14-3 or something. I think they're probably going to come back to earth a little bit.
Paul, I got the ESPN alert about that game. We heard the commotion in the press box earlier. Caleb Williams got the touchdown pass with 17 seconds left for the Bengals to beat the Bears, or for the Bears to beat the Bengals, excuse me. So that's the team in the division that lost today. The Ravens, however, took care of business against Miami, so they keep pace with the Steelers in the AFC North division race. Paul, obviously, you mentioned the trade deadline a little bit earlier. You said you'd like to see a receiver. Is there anything else you think Omar Khan needs to get done in the next few days to solidify the Steelers as a potential playoff team?
Well, a receiver, obviously. And you know what? They probably need to get a secondary guy. I know they just traded for one, a safety, but if they could go find a corner, I don't know who's out there and who's available. But they're running out of options. They need players at this position. So if they could get a corner, or even if they can get another safety, if they could get a corner and so that they can use Jalen Ramsey at safety or even find another safety, I think they could use that, but more than anything else, Adam, they need to go get a second receiver and not just somebody who's similar to what they already have. Like, I'm not saying there's a superstar out there available, but there are some really good players out there that they need to go get.
Yeah, I believe we heard Jaylen Warren may or may not still be on the market. Chris Olave is a name people talked about a lot. So it'll be interesting. The Steelers did not last year make that deal. They go out and get Mike Williams instead. And he had the big touchdown in Washington, but otherwise was rarely heard from. So did they make a move like that of a guy who maybe functions more as a decoy for DK Metcalf on the opposite side of the field where you don't plan to go for him as much? Did they just keep their cards close to the vest because of the offense that they're running right now? It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But Paul, thank you for joining me this week. We will be back next Sunday night. Steelers-Chargers on Sunday Night Football, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Also, got a lot more coming from our Steelers beat reporters this week. Jerry Dulac, Ray Fittipaldo will be joining you from the field later on. Ray will also be joining Christopher Carter on the Monday episode of the North Shore Drive podcast. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And please check out our written coverage at post-gazette.com and consider a subscription there. It certainly helps us do the coverage we love to do for all of you. So check out all those things, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.